We're here at GDC catching up with Inkle, makers of 80 Days and the Sorcery series. And first of all, what's the event? What are you doing here at GDC?
So apart from just enjoying GDC, because it's this great time of year where you get to let your hair down and meet everyone from around the game industry, which is great fun. But the biggest news for us in the past week is that we've gone open source with our internal text engine that we use to make Sorcery in 80 days. We've also got Sorcery 3 coming out on Steam on April the 5th, so we're really excited about that too. So Ink is really a big deal for us because it's been the underlying bedrock for our company. It's sort of grown organically from being just a little piece of technology that we used in our first game to the kind of progressing to being used in all of our games and actually becoming the one thing that's remained consistent throughout everything that we've made.
It is very interesting because branching narratives, that sort of thing, is a big deal in the industry today. It's something that a lot of people are dipping their toes in, but you've been doing this for quite some time, and obviously there's something there that you can share with others to help them sort of enable them, in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm super excited that narrative seems to be really in vogue right now. Like for me, recently it's been Firewatch and Oxenfree that I've been really excited about, but I feel like this sort of narrative revolution going on. I hate that word, revolution, but it sort of feels like there's a zeitgeist of narrative going on. And for me, it started with Fahrenheit from Quantic. And some people love it, some people don't, but I feel like, for me at least, it was like this cornerstone, this point of transition where we were going away from the kind of AAA games and towards indie, and whether that was because of Quantic or whether it was just kind of coincidental, I don't know, but it was the point at which I met my co-founder at Sony, John Ingold, and we were talking about kind of dialogue systems in games and what we'd want to do to improve them, because we just played games like Mass Effect where you get these different dialogue options and you might get 4 of them and you just farm them, you go through each of them in turn, and it's like the same system that's been used ever since Monkey Island and even games before that, and we just felt that there was this need for storytelling to do something a little bit more interesting, like have this forward momentum where you don't go around in circles, your conversation goes somewhere. And for me, Oxenfree recently was a really nice example of that it had this fluid conversational mechanic where you were able to interject into a conversation or let it flow, and it felt really organic. And so there are games like that we feel that could really benefit from like this narrative scripting language that we've made, and that we felt like we're sort of sitting on a goldmine of technology that should be really useful to other developers. And we know that other developers have been using horrible tools like Excel and Word, and that just don't suit game industry development. And writing tools are such an underserved area of game development. There are loads of tools for 3D animation and programming and whatever, but writers are really underserved. And with this kind of narrative change in the industry, we feel like we could really contribute something.
Is it also about sort of empowering someone who is perhaps not adept at scripting or things like that to sort of be able to contribute in a more direct way with the narrative? Because sometimes the writer is sort of like, they write on their own and is sort of disconnected from the sort of the whole process.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so since John, my co-founder, he's a writer, he's also a programmer, and I guess working together, we realized that there's this opportunity for a writer to be involved really early on in the process. And so beyond Sorcery, when we worked on 80 Days, when we brought in an external writer, we had Meg Giant start working with us right from the very beginning. So she was really part of the core team right from the beginning, whereas usually on game teams, what happens is the game gets kind of mostly made, and there are these little blank boxes that need to get filled in with text, and they bring in writers like they're minions that just need to produce words for games. And that's, writers tell stories, and if we're going to make these really rich games, they need to be involved as soon as possible. And so giving them the tools that allow them a bit of independence and the opportunity to really express themselves as part of a core team member is fantastic, as far as we're concerned. Yeah.
What's your philosophy on sort of branching narratives and bringing things back together? And because for some games you have to bring the narrative back together at certain points. What do you think of that sort of problem?
I guess if you don't know anything about branching narrative, you have this idea that perhaps you start at this beginning where everyone begins, and then it goes in all sorts of different directions, and it just gets more and more complex and you get this infinite set of possibilities. And with a really good, strong narrative, that's really not the case. So Inkle's name is actually derived from a type of weaving which is a really thin strip of fabric, and that's the way we like to think about our stories. We'd like to think about weaving threads that are all basically going in the same direction, and you bump backwards and forwards, and the narrative rejoins itself, and it's always unique to you, and you find your own way, and it's always heavily customized. But broadly, we have a really strongly authored story arc and the authorship allows every player to have this really well-crafted experience. So part of the thing that Ink as technology gives us is the ability to do that really fluidly without the writer really having to think about it. So the format, part of the format is something called Weave, which is a sort of, it looks like multiple levels of indented bullet points, and the way it works is that the game flows in and out of these bullet points, but always automatically branches and comes back together as it goes down through the text. And that really helps writers use that basic element of narrative construction that we think works really well.
Obviously, games aren't made in a day. Well, some are, but most aren't. But can you tell us a little bit about the response that you've had for the open source release of Ink?
Oh, it's been absolutely incredible. We knew we wanted to open source it around the time of GDC, but last week on Friday, we just recorded a podcast that we do internally. We call it Inklecast, and we talked about Ink, and we thought, okay, we've just recorded this podcast, let's just put it out there and click the make public button on GitHub and just see whether anyone's interested. And within a couple of days, on Twitter we had like 200 favorites and 150 retweets, and we always thought that it would be of some interest, but that was like 10 times the level that we were really expecting. And already, I mean, I've been at GDC all this week, so it's been hard to manage. But like, people have been asking questions, offering their support, offering to port certain parts of it into JavaScript from C# so that it can be used on the web. All of these things, they've been fixing bugs. So I've been sitting in talks at GDC, like looking at pull requests on GitHub and like clicking accept, and it's been phenomenal, really amazing.
All right, and I thought we'd wrap it up by you just briefly mentioned. You said that Sorcery 3 is coming out on Steam a couple of weeks from now. What other plans do you have at Inkle?
So yeah, we've got Sorcery 3 coming out on Steam on April the 5th, which is really exciting, and we're really excited to bring that to a new audience. Sorcery 4 is also on its way, which is going to be really interesting. It's going to be the final chapter of the series, which has been pretty epic for us. The Sorcery series Sorcery 1 was like our first kind of big success as a company, and it was it back in 2012, and so 4 years later to be finally polishing up the series, it's been a really good journey for us, and we're really excited to get it out there. So we've got some new features in that game. Like, if at every single Sorcery game, we like to add new technical features. We like to play with people's expectations for what we might do with the story. So we've got some surprises in store for you there.
Exciting.
Yeah.
Any chance of 81 days?
Oh, well, we've got an idea, actually, for something that we might do that's related to 80 days, that kind of fits into that general design, but we'll have to talk about that another time.
Another time. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks a lot.